Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Test, check.
Hey, good morning.
Still kind of messing with our audio setup over here.
Jim did a meeting yesterday, a V8 Plus meeting, and completely
messed with the soundboard. Just say
You'd think we would know.
Yeah.
So, everyone, let us know if you've got any audio problems
let's get
at
an
all.
audio check. Anybody listening, just throw some notes in the comments so we know that you're hearing us.
Yeah. Yesterday was a good day with some of the stuff that we did on V8. It was a V8 Plus meeting, and it was Ask a Lawyer.
Right.
And so our White Hat Way, who's attorney, who's just like so gracefully joined what it is that we're doing. Allison Harrison.
Right.
She came and and it was feedback you got was just like, it was so great to be able to just ask questions and get answers.
Yeah, we had several dealers in the meeting, and listen, if you're listening and you're not sure what V8 is, please reach out. Let's get you in a V8 dealer group. These are affordable groups where we compare, and then the V8 Plus thing is kind of a bonus track that we have on top of our V8 home group. So yesterday we had a kind of Ask a Lawyer thing, and the comments that came back was like, oh, it was great because she actually just answered the questions. Right.
Yep.
So
it makes a difference.
So people had very specific questions and they got very specific answers, and it was really good. We're grateful to her for making time to contribute in that way.
Yep.
And and then we had a meeting last night of one of our groups that's the larger groups, and that went really well. That's that group is solid, really learning from one another. Their data is now, represents a little more than a year with most members. And we're really starting to get kind of the formula, if you will, dialed in on some of these groups. And that's certainly one of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, shall we dive into our topic
I
of
think
the day?
that sounds like a great idea.
So today I chose to bring the subject of portfolio analysis, which is something that, I've been working with portfolio analysis for many years.
Yeah. When I met you, you were doing like deep portfolio analysis for a handful of clients, and it's a big deal.
Keep in mind, I was first a consultant in this space 25 years ago, but I wasn't doing back then. I wasn't doing, the deep dives that we do now. And now we've got more history and more, ways to kind of go about calculate. And sometimes my terminology might be different. What somebody else calls loss to liquidation ratio, I might call conversion rate or whatever, but it's pretty much all calculating the same sort of methods of measuring performance. Words. So they vary and they matter.
Yeah. Well, as long as you're able to communicate, this is what this is. Sure. And that's
probably part of why I choose different language. As a former dealer myself, I just try to put it in language that I think the dealers can make sense of instead of high level, Wall Street kind of calculations and that sort of thing in the finance sector. So this is something that we do. And so for today, what I did is I prepared the same template that we always use. And what I didn't pull together in time for this broadcast was the kind of the illustration of how it looks inside a V8 dealer composite, for example, in their summary report. Because one of the things that you hear us talk about, we've talked about on the podcast plenty of times, and this is part of why we came up with the White Hat Way portfolio summary report that we proposed to all the DMS providers, because we're always trying to help dealers first reconcile, it's like a soft reconciliation of principle in their portfolio. And the reason that's important is because we can't begin to analyze the portfolio performance until we know what's moving in and out of the portfolio. So it's just kind of step one. So that's why, and I'll go ahead and share the template. I got, I think we've got it set up where we can do that. Let me try I may have to reposition that just a bit, but one moment. But I've got a template kind of teed up where we can illustrate, and give me a minute to get it loaded up on my side. Okay, so now
there you go. I'll put it in. All righty.
So I can't really see both at the same time.
I'm going to do that. That'll make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So this is a template that I've used for quite some time, and I want to provide this to anybody who will just send me an email. You can see my email is there, and it says here, all data supplied to White Hat Way is held in strict confidence. For info and questions, contact Jim at whitehatway.com.
So Jim at whitehatway.com.
Yeah. And if you put that banner up for folks to see, if you wouldn't mind, that way, just know if you want to receive this template, then along with a tutorial, kind of instructions on how to complete it, then, just send us a note and just put on there, free template, and we'll get this thing to you, because what it's designed to really do is capture the key numbers that are going to be first identifying the portfolio.
Well, and I would just like to, before we recognize that on all of our podcasts, our syndicated stations, you don't have visuals, you don't have the videos. So those of you who would like to kind of see what this is all about, please go to our YouTube channel. And and I think I've got that queued somewhere. It's
subscribe while you're there.
While you're there, it's YouTube, Jim and Michelle Rhoads / Buy Here Pay Your Auto Finance Coaches.
Right. So just find us on YouTube, and that way you can find all this stuff on video and see the screens that we're going to go through here. But
like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go back into
So you see the template on the screen, right? So I want to start throwing some numbers in there as an illustration of how the thing is meant to work. And the reason, when we talk about portfolio reconciliation, I've just got this thing set up for January through, it looks like it actually goes out to 15 months in this case. But I would say if a dealer's going to complete this, we would want to see at least 6 months. Okay.
Well, you can put in 2 months, but it's not going to be as rich of data kind of thing.
It wouldn't be reliable. I would be reluctant to make any recommendations or any kind of conclusions based on a few months, because the numbers move up and down based on a heavy charge off month and what have you. So basically what's happening here is we want to go back, and not every system is going to have this. So hopefully you would have these balances captured somewhere. Obviously you could just do this thing starting on April 1st and start doing it going forward. But the real benefit of this thing primarily is to be able to build back your history and now take that and build some sort of projection from that, so that you can, and also one of the things I will do when people request this template, when they complete it and send it back to us, I will prepare for them a free analysis that basically gives them their own results adjacent to our V8 averages, which would be brought from dozens of dealers. So that way they can see kind of how their own portfolio performance stacked up. But let me just show folks kind of how this thing is completed. If you just had a starting balance I'm looking at the month of January here. If you had a starting balance of $1 million and you did, let's say you did $150,000 in originations. Okay. So you'd put that number in there, new contracts added to the portfolio, just the principal part, just the amount financed, and then principal collected. So we got to separate P&I. In some systems that's super easy, and others, it's surprisingly, requires a little bit more. But if we put, let's say we collected $35,000 in principal, we'd put that in there in the month of January in this example. And then if we charged off $25,000, and then ask for other principal adjustments. So sometimes these are, and you can see as I hover over there's descriptions in there. We put
very helpful
explanation of what these things are. And then this is not common, but might be smaller negative adjustments, like such as write downs, or different software has different names for these things. It could be no pays, or again, different names. But we're really just talking about something that's not in the charge off category, but that did get adjusted in the portfolio or adjusted in customers' accounts. So the common scenario would be there's a payoff check comes in and it's like, $300 short of the payoff. And instead of making a fuss about it, we just choose to write it off as we post that check. And so you'll post that, it's really not a charge off, but it belongs in here. So let me put a number in there of $800. So now what that says is calculating right there on row 13. According to this, if we started with this and we added this much in new principal, and we collected and charged off this much and had other adjustments, we should end up with that. And now we go to the report and see, okay, let's say that we show at the close of the month that we actually had, get the right number zeros in there, So this is pretty typical. Like it's pretty uncommon for dealers, unless they really know what they're doing. They're really, familiar with their software. It's common for us to be off by a small amount, right? And so it becomes a question of how much effort do we want to put into chasing it.
So that's 0.8% is your off.
It's how much we're off.
And so when you're working with dealers, you try to get it within what?
1%. And so it says that here too.
So it's under 1%. So yeah.
So we're trying to get that so we're under 1%. So we would just move on. If that number came out to be much more than 1%, I would recommend go back and look at the numbers, adjust what you need to adjust to get that to balance more closely. So why? Because once we finish like this row right here, how much principal we collected, having that number be accurate is going to be really important in terms of calculating portfolio performance. Having this number be reasonably accurate is going to help us calculate portfolio performance. So we've got to get numbers that are fairly close. And then you can see once I entered this 1.1 million for the close of the month, it brought that number up to the start of the next month, so that we start each month with a fresh, correct balance, so to speak. And that way we just keep moving forward and keep loading that. So as many months as we could put in there, again, I would say at least 6 months to give you any kind of reliable performance history.
So basically what you're, have you not gotten to the end of the full performance part?
Well, let me explain.
Stuff down there. Okay,
I'm going to throw some numbers in here. Interest collected might've been this. Let's say we had 25,000 in charge off. So let's say we had 10,000 in repo recovery. The reason those go on a separate line down here is because these don't affect principal. So this is why that White Hat Way portfolio summary up here is just looking at principal, open, new. I call it principal activity. Like we're trying to identify the principal activity. Why? Because most of us are simple interest. It's the principal balance that drives the interest that we earn. So we need to make sure we know. And the other thing I talked about back when we did the White Hat Way portfolio summary report is, and I had a conversation earlier in the week with a DMS provider. And I just, without having them answer me, I basically said, I know that any dealer anywhere on simple interest and probably, rule of 78 for that matter too, but we mostly work with simple interest, is like any customer who walked in and wanted to pay off their account today, we would have to be able to produce a payoff statement that showed exactly what their principal balance is, exactly what their accrued interest is. So my point is pretty much every DMS system should have every customer's precise principal balance every minute of the day. Okay. Right up to the last payment posted. So what that tells me is that the principal activity, the principal movement in the portfolio across a range of time, in this case, we're dealing with a calendar month, it ought to be accurate. It ought to be there somewhere in the system, because those DMS providers have a very specific obligation to report to the customer, because I, as a dealer, has a responsibility to report to the customer. So this is why I say it's all got to be there. So that's why this top section, becomes important. If it's not balancing, we need to, it's most likely it's because dealers didn't capture their actual notes receivable balance at the start of the period, and that's common. A lot of these systems don't record that, or they might not have run the report until 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the 1st. And now it's not quite accurate because there were payments that came in and got posted. And so this typically contributes to, and this is why we just kind of trying to help dealers that we can't really know precisely what our portfolio performance is until we can get these things nailed down. But this is just a practice. I'm just kind of today illustrating a methodology. And so again, if people just want to contact us, they can send an email to Jim at White Hat Way and just say, I'd like to have the template. We'll send it to you. And then if you want to complete it and send it back to us, we'll provide you that comparative analysis so you can get a feel for where you're at. Yeah.
What a great value.
Yeah, just trying to give folks a feel for what the practice is, and then they can reuse this template and expand it and keep using it as a tool going forward for their own analysis. But I think the key thing is just helping people understand where to start. Like, what is it? What do I really need to know? And so, you could work backwards. It becomes tricky if you're going to work backwards. Let's say I got a dealer who, we're sitting here after they complete March, they want to do 6 months worth. So they're going to go back to October. Well, in order to do that, you would need to come back here to September and put whatever your portfolio balance was at the close of September. And now it's going to bring that up to October 1. Right. And now we can start working October forward.
Gotcha.
So just understand that's the calculation process there.
So, and this is a really great tool for looking in the past
Yep.
as well as like aiming for the future. So it's like you're able to, when we talk, a lot of dealers are like, what are my KPIs? What should I
Right.
be? And this is just about understanding your numbers. This is kind of like a key performance indicator
Right.
of like, are you putting things in the right columns?
Right.
And are so the like you said is it's keeping it to that 1% or less of the deviation. And so it's kind of a way to just kind of keep a temperature check on how well you are attributing different things and the movement of your portfolio. I mean, just
yeah. And if nothing else, even if we don't analyze portfolio from this, I think it will be a real test of folks' software and to extent their processes. Because if they're not capturing these balances, then it begs the question, like, how can a CPA do accounting? I mean, they've got certain reports and they can do a calculation that says we apparently started the period with this balance of receivables, and we calculate that we would have closed the period with this, but it's like that stuff really ought to tie together. Why would I set that bar? Because again, my gosh, we're responsible for tracking our customers' principal balance every minute of the day. So that just means we should have those numbers, and if our DMS won't quickly get us there, then it's maybe a time to look at, am I on the right DMS for my situation? And this is a good way to find out. But also, just once you have it, then we can start to run calculations on those conversion rates in terms of how well is the portfolio converting to cash? How does my charge-off experience compare to other dealers, right? So this is the way we measure.
It's just like really, really valuable, I think, for dealers to be able to get just pretty look at their numbers like this and also be able to do a comparison to dealers around the country.
Sure.
And your camera's off, by the way.
Oh yeah.
It's the value of being able to see in kind of real time where you are in comparison, because I mean, gosh, so many dealers, it's like I'm on a lone island. And I know based on the stuff that I've been looking at, whether or not I'm in a place that it's like I feel good about, or it's stable or whatever. And it's just super helpful to be able to kind of start to see how other people are where their ratios are and all of that, so that you can know, all right, I'm in a good place, or hey, there are some things that I need to be working on if I want to be able to get within these ratios. And so again, dealers all the time are like KPIs. And it's one thing for you just to throw out a number and throw out a number. This is a way for you to measure, not just like in a single snapshot, this is where I should be, so I'm doing something wrong, but be able to measure over time, where you are in relation, just how your portfolio is moving, what kind of repos you're doing, what kind of, how much you're collecting. Cause there's other pieces to this that you could just like, so what is your collection performance look like?
This is an area where we need to get quite specific, because we're running our business off of that. People are out there having conversations on social media and elsewhere about what it looks like, and if people are making business decisions based on this, I think it's important. And we strive to make sure that when we talk numbers, we get as specific as possible. So what dealers can expect to see when they send in this template, they fill it out and they send the numbers back in. When they get something back from us, what it's basically going to illustrate is, here's your results. Here's the results of 17 dealers of similar size who across this time period originated X amount of dollars, right? And so we try to give them very specific comparative information so that they can have more confidence in what they're looking at. And it's just, I've said in the past, I think we have to be careful. We have to move beyond opinions.
Oh yeah.
And just, verbal exchanges. Like, let's get specific when it comes to numbers.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the things with dealers that are in a 20 group or in a V8 group or whatever, where they're getting together with other dealers. They ask different questions and they have different opinions, because, it's one thing to have an opinion as sole man on an island, because it's like, this works for me to like look at what are my assumptions, what are my
Sure.
opinions, and are they solid?
Right.
And so something like this, the cool thing that I appreciate about it is that, one, you're gonna be able to kind of see where your ebbs and flows and that. And, sometimes like if 1 month it's like, I didn't do well at all. And then you can put in there and go, oh, that was when so-and-so did such and such, or that
Or
this
had a
thing, or
management
had a
change,
management change or whatever. And so you're able to just really, in just a very holistic way, look at the things that are happening in your business.
Right.
And then, if you feel like there's something off, or that, you weren't aware that in comparison, this is where I'm at, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
That's like, all right, so what are the factors
Right.
that are driving this and this? And so, that's where you, being in a some kind of a dealer performance or peer group,
Right.
is really, really, really valuable.
Yeah.
That's where having a coach or a consultant or something that can just like really dive into those things and see if they can uh identify, if
Right.
you can't identify, like where the opportunities
Sure.
are for you to improve.
Yeah. And I think I can share with, listeners that, so in our V8 format, one of the things we do, you heard us say, we validate the numbers to plus or minus 1% on the portfolios. We just try to make sure dealers, if they get the numbers in, if that's off, we go back to them and say, hey, we're off by this amount. Can we figure that out? And so that does a couple of things. We had one dealer, for example, this month, from last month's data, was off by about 200 grand. They had been in balance the month before, and this month they were off by about 200 grand. Well, most of us don't want to underreport or overreport 200 grand. That's going to misrepresent our results. And so that's not a livable.
Well, it's also, though, it's $200,000 off. It's also in relation to how large your portfolio is together, because we've got, you work with dealers that have massive portfolios. And so $200,000 off, when you're looking at it in scale, is not that big of, I mean, it's, still $200,000, but it's not nearly as what the heck is happening here as a ratio as with someone that represents a much larger percentage of their portfolio.
Yeah, but I would say even the largest dealers, multi-million-dollar portfolios, even if you're off by $200,000, it's like, did that 200,000, our calculations are off. Did we collect 200,000 more than we're reporting? Did we charge off 200,000 more than we're like? That's a big number to not know which bucket it belongs in.
And we know from one of our clients that we've been working with for a long time that even when you have a larger portfolio, that you can, when you really, really understand every little piece of, and we're attributing things the same way. And so that, your procedures for how you do this and how you do that, and that it can be, dollars or cents close to like balancing to the penny kind of thing.
Yeah. And, it doesn't have to be a penny for sure. Most systems would take a lot of work. We spent a lot of time with one of our clients trying to get to a place where we could finally identify all the pieces. And, some of them, even though the software is fairly sophisticated, the reports didn't automatically include the principal balance or the principal amount that was collected or charged off or written off or whatever. It didn't so we had to go kind of customized reports in order to be able to capture the actual,
which is so interesting when we work with a lot of different DMS providers, and you say, I need to get this, and they're like, yeah, it's right here. And so you show it to them, it's like, no, that is not what and it's words too. Or that they haven't been a data analyst in the buyer payer space, and so it's a different thing you're looking for than what someone who hasn't dove that far into numbers, that it's like this is what our program, this is what our system has, and so this is your answer. And it's like it's not. And
listen, folks, it's well established that I'm a numbers nerd, right?
Yes, it's one of the things I find so endearing about you.
Well, good, thank you. No, it's really just about, to me, I want it to be precise. I mean, we want accuracy here within reason, and there's a reasonable amount of effort we can put in these things. But I think that the opportunity in digging into that is a couple things for these dealers. It lets them verify that they can identify all the moving pieces, and so it's a first step toward. In this case, we're talking portfolio analysis, but this same thing is going to serve with theft analysis.
I was going to say
it's going to serve with accounting. I mean, we just first have to identify all the moving parts.
Are you just bleeding money? And not sure where it's happening, and it may not be theft, but it's just like, oh my gosh, this is something that's worth looking into about why there's this discrepancy. And I mean, sometimes it can be in
well, sometimes these numbers are being reported, like in our V8 format. Sometimes the numbers are being reported by the CFOs or the controllers, and so it's really begs the question about, how well do they know the system, and do they know like from an accounting standpoint, even, like it just begs the question, like, and I'm not picking on anybody. I should really
that's like it adds another layer.
It just points out that there's stuff that because dealers are busy. They're not typically, if they have a very sizable operation, they're not the ones who are producing these numbers. Many of our dealers do, but it just kind of depends on their stage of business and how much they enjoy working with the software, probably. But
when you talk about accounting, most dealers really when you look at percentages of people that we've worked with, most dealers just have their neighborhood accountant. And so a neighborhood accountant also does not understand how deeply, unless the dealer has gone in and really taught them. Most accountants don't deeply understand how money moves around, and what
that's a good point. This thing is that's one other area where this particular effort to sort of do the soft reconciliation on the principal is a component of cash flow analysis. So if we're going to measure cash flow performance, especially like a direct cash flow, not so much like the cash flow statement that comes out of QuickBooks, it really doesn't mean much to a buy here, pay here dealer. But if you can produce a direct cash flow statement, which we're giving a simplified sort of cash flow snapshot in our V8 summaries, so that people can get a feel for, they have to report their operating expenses to us in order for us to be able to do that. But because that part's optional in what we do. But
so it's just side note a little bit, kind of, it seems this is me drawing a conclusion from all the conversations and things that we have frequently, is that there's two people that are people that are really, really important to your business, that it's important that they understand the business. One is your accountant and the other is your attorney. Is having someone that really understands all the moving pieces, because then they can give you just solid feedback and know what it is that they're looking for. And it's from my perspective, is when you do have an accountant and an attorney that really understand the space, you know that your questions are going to be answered in a way that, one, is going to keep you compliant, and two, is going to keep you compliant with the IRS.
Right. That's a good point.
So,
that's true about the accountant. I would just say, I'm typically going to be advocating for most dealer principals that they have somebody in the chain between them and the accountant who understands the internal procedures, the processes, and the software well enough to be able to reconcile a report like this before it goes to the accountant. Because if the accountants say, garbage in, garbage out, it's like, if they don't get good information, they can only produce accounting as good as what's delivered to them from the software. And so they've either got to become software experts, and most
there are a couple that are out there that are really, really prominent in the space, CPAs, but locals, they are not.
And so this is a problem that we see across different DMS systems. But this is why I say I would be advocating for the dealer to have somebody on the team. And that's why we make ourselves available to help these controllers and office managers to come up on a meeting with us, and let's walk through the numbers together, and let's figure it out together, because we have some familiarity with most DMS systems, right?
When I was thinking about the dealer that we've been working with for a long time, that you've got it down to the penny, I just from observing the many meetings that you and the dealer and their accountant, because the accountant was not familiar with the space, but and it's just that from the feedback I'd get after your meeting, it's like, oh, he got it about a couple of different things, and so he's looking at this just a little bit differently than he did before, and it is helpful.
Yeah, and that's just the difference between operational decision making versus accounting, and so there's financial analysis, and then there's analysis of the operation. And one of the things that I enjoy doing, and the work that we're doing with White Hat Way, is we're working to bring those things closer together, so that the work that we do, and this is why the reconciliation, it's a step toward helping on the accounting side, because we should be able to rely on this principal reconciliation. When we get that thing to plus or minus 1%, hopefully the dealers will get familiar enough with their software, because again, if our software won't give us every number to reconcile our principal, then we really need to ask ourselves if we should be looking at a different software, because this is really something that, I mean, it's just so fundamental. It's like I said, we have to know the principal balance on every customer at any end of the day.
And just with the amount of dealers that we work with and their, not necessarily their software, but their reporting, is there are some that are more elegant and accurate
and more complete.
and complete than others. But we've found that in a lot of ways that there's ways to get there.
Yeah,
it's just sometimes a lot more work.
Our typical dealer is not going to have the knowledge or the time to export reports and run pivot tables and all kinds of kind of higher level
unless they're Excel nerds like you, and they're not all of them.
Most aren't. And so this is the point, is like the software ought to do this for us. So we pay for our software, and the software's got to track this principle, spit it out for us. This is why, and I didn't expect to end up talking about the White Hat Way portfolio summary report again, but that's you can find that podcast that we did. We introduced that and made that request by email back in June of 24. And we're just going to keep kind of renewing that request on behalf of dealers, so that every DMS can help get us there, because we would love that. Those numbers I showed you on the screen: opening balance, new originations, collected this much, charge off this much, and just spit it out on a single report across whatever date range I choose. Then that's kind of that's a pretty reasonable bar.
Yeah.
So
George, I would just love that. George always listens. I think the personality of the two professionals you mentioned also should mesh with yours, which is very true. He says, I just had a dealer leave a very qualified and recommended accountant because of style. And that's obviously, that's that, there's going to be some people that you mesh with and some people you don't. And then there are those that it's just like, I can get over this too. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a whole other conversation.
It's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But I do.
Yeah.
What else we got?
No,
is that it?
We should get on to the rest of our Friday.
Oh my goodness. It is Friday, isn't it? I there was like a whole lineup on certain stations, and it was TGIF. And I think that, there was the family, all sorts of like family programming, 30-minute whatever sitcoms and stuff. I remember that.
Of course, I'm a lot younger than you.
That's true. That's true. You can see it.
Of course. Yeah.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being a part of the our audience and podcast. Again, go to our YouTube channel, Jim and Michelle Rhoads, Buy Your Pair Coaches.
Subscribe
over there too. And hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great weekend. It's like a lot of this stuff is starting to wrap up, and
enjoy your weekend.
All right. Thanks everybody.